I want to invite Bill Kuzan up. As I said earlier, 14 years ago, I had the honor of being able to introduce Bill for his presidential address. So this is really a heartfelt moment for me to be able to actually have Bill do the same for me now. So Bill, please come on up, and thanks so much for doing this.
So it's my honor to be able to introduce Paul as our president this year. I want to start out by thanking Shayla and Adeza and Carolyn for the 50 emails telling me I have 2 minutes to do this. And to let you know in advance, I've just disregarded that. Because it's not possible to introduce Paul Sederna in 2 minutes. So Paul, we all know, is a unique individual. And it started right at the beginning. He's not from Zealand, but he shares with Dr. Rourke that he's from a remote, forsaken place of the world called the Upper Peninsula of Michigan. And if you didn't know where that is, that's Marquette, Michigan circled. And Paul's also unique in another way in that right from the very beginning, he had that flippy-do hair thing going. And there's a lot of pictures here, and if you can't figure out who he is in the pictures, just look for the hair. We all know Paul as a master surgeon. He is the surgeon all of the staff and faculty at Michigan go to when they need surgical care. He's exceptionally gifted. And although we throw the word innovation around in plastic surgery, I actually think it's relatively uncommon. But Paul and his collaborative team, as we all know, were the innovators of the regenerative peripheral nerve interface, which not only is an interface for advanced prosthetics control for amputees, but also a prophylactic and a treatment modality for painful neuromas, a problem that was plaguing us for decades, centuries. Master surgeon, surgical innovator. Paul's also an academician with very few, if any, peers. And if you just read down that list, I'm sure we need grief counselors outside for everybody feeling so inadequate for their own accomplishments. $60 million in total grant funding, $7.5 million current, over 400 scientific papers, president of Blue Arbor Technologies, and mentor to hundreds of colleagues at all levels, from undergraduate and high school students right through people sitting in this room. An amazing amount of dedication and contribution to our specialty. And Paul is a natural leader. He didn't need to go to leadership school. He was section head of plastic surgery. He was my boss for 13 years, 12 years. And he has been president or chair of every single major important plastic surgery organization in our specialty. That is not obviously by accident. You don't get there by going to cocktail parties. You get there by making solid contributions, coming up with innovative solutions, and doing a lot of very, very hard work. So those are things that you probably all knew about Paul. He's incredibly accomplished. But let's talk about his family. So Paul grew up in a very big family, 7 siblings. Paul's dad was an oral surgeon, U of M football player. And Paul is the 6th of the 7th in the birth order. He's the 4th of the 4 boys, which Gene told me explains a lot. And he grew up in the Upper Peninsula, which meant he spent a lot of time killing and eating stuff. which he still does to this day. And I think we also all know that sports are an integral part of Dr. Sederna. He's a gifted athlete, started at a young age when he tore up junior hockey. He went on to be a champion ski racer, including a stint on the Olympic development team. That's a picture of him and his friends at Mount Hood in the summer. And just as a backup, he went to Michigan on a tennis scholarship. So, very gifted athlete, which also continues to this day, including coaching his children's teams, other people's. He's got multiple of his people he coached who play in professional sports. He's an avid skier. That's us skiing together a couple minutes before I broke my ribs, trying to keep up with him. The picture water skiing, that's 50 feet in front of the house, their house in Michigan, and he's an avid supporter of Michigan sports. It's true blue through and through. But what Paul, I think, is most devoted to is his family. He and Jean met in medical school. And I realized that the other guy in that picture also has the flippy-do hair, so that might be a little confusing. They were married in 1989, so they've had over 35 years of marriage and going strong. And they have two fantastic children. That's a picture of Paige at her wedding last year. Paige is a social worker in Chicago. And Colin is a public school teacher. He teaches science, technology, engineering, and so on at Jackson Public Schools. Even though Colin kind of looks like Paul in this picture, I like this picture of Colin better. He's definitely not channeling Paul there. And the entire Sederna family have made incredible philanthropic contributions to our community and to the world. The Hope Clinic is a local free medical clinic for care for people who can't afford it. Over 5,000 individual unique patient visits per year. Jean served as the medical director for a while, and they have made major philanthropic contributions in that regard. Heart to Hearth is an orphanage in Kenya that they established that takes care of orphans, mostly from the high incidence of AIDS and AIDS-related deaths in Africa. And so, that's an immense contribution to humanity. And then even more than that, they actually also rescue dogs. So they have a house full of dogs all the time, mostly doodles, who I used to make fun of, but we have a doodle now, and they are awesome dogs. And so I feel very fortunate that Dr. Sederna, Paul, has been my friend and colleague for many years. We've done many things together. That's actually a picture of those broken ribs. Skied together, sailed together, done lots of things together. And Paul he's not only my friend. It turns out he's also my doctor. So that is the free gracilis flap that Dr. Sederna and Momo put on my left medial malleolus when I had a complex wound related to a hardware infection. And, you see me walking around now, you wouldn't know, so they did an awesome job. And, going through all the photos, and thanks, Jean, for sending me so many photos, I realized that I knew Paul, but I didn't know one thing about him. Maybe I should have. But it turns out he has a thing for goats. So if any of you guys have goats, you don't want to leave them alone with Dr. Sederna. So it is my honor and privilege to introduce my friend and colleague and our president, Dr. Paul Sederna, to give his presidential address.
Thanks. Appreciate Oh my God. So about to go. Don't knock it till you try it. That's all I'm saying. All right, here we go. So you don't have to have it all figured out to move forward. You just need to take the next step. And so what I want to do is I want to start my discussion about innovation, but start it with a story. And this is a story of Mike. And Mike is a young guy, incredibly charismatic, college football player, national level power lifter who got electrocuted, had a 50% total body surface area burn, and burned his arm off. I had operated on him like 15 times after that injury, and fortunately was able to save his life. But the thing that we were not able to do is we were not able to restore him to what he was before. And what we were able to do at that time was grossly inadequate. And Mike would come to my clinic and he would be wearing a hook. And I'm thinking, oh my God, in 2005, the best we can do is a hook. And it was at that point I decided I was committing my career to make that better. Started this journey of innovation. So innovation, it really isn't just about being creative and having good ideas. It's really so much more than that. You know, when we think of all the things and we talk about all the things, creativity, ideas, innovation, vision, inspiration, development of things, probably one of the most important things of all is just hard work. Hard work, dedication, commitment, and singular focus on the ultimate goal. And my ultimate goal was to actually do better than a hook. Doesn't seem like much, but it hadn't happened for decades. So converting that creativity to a reality, though, isn't just thinking. It is not just thinking, it's a process. And so I'm gonna spend a little bit of time talking about that process with you and how we work through it to try to improve the chances of success when you are innovating. So the first step really is ask why. So for me, I was asking why does he have a hook? Why is the best he can do have a hook? Or why do bovies have cords? Or why do we use post lavage and have that thing splash and pus all over the room on everyone? It's disgusting. Or why do we have in all of our hospitals people lost all the time? Why don't we have wayfinding apps for the hospitals so people find their way? No, I mean, just ask why. And anything that you're motivated to evaluate, anything you're motivated to think about, ask why. But you have to ask the question in a different way than people have been asking it before. Because people asking the question before never got to the solution because maybe they just weren't looking at it in the right way. So that takes me to a zombie apocalypse. So what I want all of you in the room to do is I want you to stop for a minute, and I'm going to give you one weapon and one vehicle for the zombie apocalypse, okay? So you're thinking about that, and you're thinking about I'm going to have guns, machine guns, swords, bow and arrow, whatever. I'm going to have cars, I'm going to have a tank, I'm going to have whatever. Okay, that's what everyone's thinking. The reality is, to survive the zombie apocalypse, it's hard because there's a lot of them. If you've ever seen a zombie movie, they always get killed if they try to fight them. But if you look at it in a different way, because I asked you a question in a certain way, you were thinking about weapons and fighting them. But if you looked at it in a different way with a different perspective, your goal is actually to survive the zombie apocalypse. You don't have to fight them at all. So my vehicle, this yacht. I'm gonna go sit on that yacht and I'm gonna let the zombies do what zombies do, and I don't even care because I'm on a yacht. And my weapon, I don't need a weapon. What I need is a Magnum bottle of Dom because I'm on a yacht. But that is looking at a problem in a different way. And so it's reframing the questions. And we as plastic surgeons have opportunities to do that because when we come into areas where plastic surgeons don't typically work, we bring a whole new skill set in. And we can look at things in different ways and we can reframe those questions. The next thing is build diverse teams. We know from Fortune 500 companies that the more diversity there is in the company, the more successful those companies are. And we're not just talking about one form of diversity, we're talking about diversity in all forms, because what that brings is that brings different perspectives. And that brings different ways of looking at the same problem. And that gives you opportunities to think about things in different ways that people have never thought about them before, and then maybe come up with solutions they didn't think about. So my team at Michigan has Cindy Chestek. She's a biomedical engineering. She's a brain-machine interface person. Brent Gillespie is in mechanical engineering. He was doing haptic feedback for computer software games originally. Then there's Ted Kung, who you all know, who's a gifted microsurgeon who's been doing research on peripheral nerve interfacing forever. Steve Kemp, who's a neurophysiologist who runs our neuromuscular laboratory, and Deanna Gates in kinesiology, who works with lower extremity. But this is our team, and we attack the problems together, which gives us an opportunity to have lots and lots of different ideas and ways to approach them. Then the next step is to brainstorm around an idea. So when you're trying to solve something, you need a lot of ideas. And so what you have to do is you have to create a safe environment for free thought. And the goal here is just a free flow of ideas. Get as many ideas as you can out there. There are no bad ideas at all. Everyone in the group gives ideas of ways to solve this particular problem. There's no judgment, there's no hierarchy, there's nothing. Everyone has the same thing. And the goal of these brainstorming sessions is just quantity. Lots of ideas. So this is one of our brainstorming sessions right here. What's on this board actually doesn't matter, but there's a lot of scribbling here. And you see there's one idea for peripheral nerve interfacing. Here's another idea. Here's another idea. They're all ideas, but then we all come together and we start talking about all these ideas, and then we decide, all right, which one are we going to pursue first? Which one is the one that maybe has a chance to get us to where we want to go, and which one do we go with first? So then we design killer experiments. So these experiments are not killer like that's a really killer idea, amazing. No, these experiments are experiments designed to kill an idea. So rather than spending years trying to solve a problem, you go right to the end first. And you immediately go to the end and you do the experiment at the very end. And if the thing works or sort of works, maybe that idea's got some legs and you ought to pursue it. So an example, so I'm sitting in Department of Surgery grand rounds, and there's a transplant talk going on. Transplant surgeons are talking about how kidneys that they transplant dump glucose. And they dump glucose because they think because they're denervated. So when the talk was over, I went up and I talked to the guy giving the talk, and I said, so you're telling me if the kidneys that are denervated dump glucose, could I just take normal kidneys and just modulate the nerves to the kidney? And if I modulate the nerves to the kidney, I can stop neurotransmission and essentially temporarily denervate that kidney. And if I do that, could I then adjust blood glucose levels? And they're like, that's a stupid idea. And I'm like, oh, perfect then. That's the one. Because every time somebody does that, that is when you know there's probably something to it. So our killer experiment, we just went right to the experiment. We're like, all right, let's just see. So took a rat, put an infusion pump in their jugular, put them on the vent, cannulated their ureters, put force generators on their kidneys so that we could stimulate their kidneys. Here's a graph right here. In the red is blood glucose levels, and you see the blood glucose for the rat is about 500. Urine glucose is sitting lower in yellow. I do 50,000 hertz stimulation of the nerves to the kidney. Blood glucose goes down, urine glucose goes up. Shut the stimulator off, it reverses. We did this a bunch of times. It works. What that tells us now, we did the killer experiment. The killer experiment worked. Now we have to figure out, are we killing the kidney? Are we hurting the kidney? Is there anything else? Now we've got to do the hard work, and we've got to grind it out and figure out what else we're doing. But I do know we can control blood glucose now by neurally modulating the nerves to the kidney. Killer experiments. The next thing, you've got to ignore the box. People talk about thinking outside the box. I completely disagree with that, because if you're in the box, yeah, you're worthless. If you're thinking outside the box is still there and it's still influencing you. You have to ignore the box completely, because that is what is going to give you an opportunity to have free thought and to consider things that people hadn't thought of before, stimulating nerves to the kidney. So I got a grant from NASA. And this grant from NASA was to design a medical module for a deep space mission. 300 days to Mars, 400 days on Mars, 300 days back. And NASA gave me about a terabyte of information to work on. So what I did is I put a group of undergrad students together from all over the University of Michigan, from engineering, from literature, science, and arts, from the business school, from architecture, from everywhere. And you know what I did? I didn't share any of the information with them at all, other than all the medical stuff that happens in space. So they know every single medical mishap that happened in space, so we know what we have to design for. NASA did not give me money to design a medical module because I know anything about space. I am unencumbered by knowledge. However, creativity, and I have a bunch of young people with a bunch of amazing ideas, and I have them, and I say, you can pull from any sci-fi book you read, movie you saw, video game you played, whatever, but let's build this thing and let's figure it out. So we put together this, our medical module. And the medical module is amazing, and we can manage just about everything. We even had processes in place if somebody dies of what we're gonna do with the body and use it because resources are slim. And it's shaped like a circle so we can give gravity there, so when people get to Mars, which has gravity, they're able to stand up. So this is a way of thinking outside the box. I didn't want anyone, at that point, they didn't give us money so that we could just tell them what a whole bunch of people at NASA had already thought about. They gave it to us, so maybe we came up with something that had some value. Gotta ignore the box. Next, gotta embrace change to innovate. So the big thing about embracing changes, we know people are allergic to change. And you know what? It is so hard for some people because they get used to their routines, and when they're in those routines, it's easy and it's comfortable. But just like Rod was saying, you have to get outside of that comfort zone. You have to accept the uncertainty of change. Otherwise, you will never go anywhere. And this statement, but we've always done it this way, this is the death of every business everywhere if they continue to say that. We would still be driving Model Ts to work if we didn't change. Actually, we'd be riding horses to work. We wouldn't even have a Model T. And then we would never get this, which I'm sure all of you in this room have, other than us because we're in academics, but different point. You have to be able to embrace change, and it is hard. And with this meeting, there are a number of things that are different. This afternoon, you are going to be free from 1 to 5 to go and play in the sand and enjoy the sun because we're in Hawaii, for God's sakes. And you should do that and not feel guilty about sitting in this room when this beautiful weather is happening outside. Change. It's hard. The next thing, if you're going to innovate, you need to learn to fail. Fail fast, fail early, fail often, and you've all heard this before. I don't consider it failing at all. It's not failing, it is learning. Now, when you're a kid and you stick your finger in an outlet, it's kind of failing, but you learn. You learn not to stick your finger in the outlet again. But a lot of people really think that when you are innovating, you either take a path to success and you win, or you take a path to failure. But that's actually not how it works at all. I mean, it looks like this. And that's why we use this whole process of designing killer experiments with the idea of just figuring out right away if something works or not, because then we go on we take a completely different path. And so it's this whole cycle of try, fail, and ultimately you get to success. But really it's trying and learning and trying and learning and trying and learning. So today, in front of us, we have two paths we can potentially take. We have plan A and we have plan B. So we're using the data we have today, and we're trying to decide what's the best plan for us. So based on what we know today, we pick plan A. So we start walking down the path in plan A, and we're a month in, we're 2 months in, we're 3 months in, and all of a sudden plan A isn't very good. And then actually at that point, we're thinking, well, maybe plan B was better. The key to success is not being slavishly adherent to some decision based on old data, because now you have run the experiment, and even though plan A didn't work, you made the right decision, because at the time with the information you had, plan A was the best choice. So you made the right decision. But at that point then, the right decision is no longer following plan A, but it's then switching over to plan B. You learned, you ran the experiment, now you're on plan B, and it's good. People always say winners never quit. That's a lie. Winners quit stuff all the time. They just quit the right stuff at the right time. And so you cannot stick to the plan just because it was somebody's idea and they feel like it's their baby and they don't want their feelings hurt because now you're not going to follow that plan anymore. Have to be able to embrace that change and accept when you've run the experiment and it doesn't work. When you do something new, you have to be courageous. And that courage is really important because what happens when you do something new is that there is somebody else or groups of other people somewhere else that do things a certain way and you're doing it a new way, and it makes them nervous. And they will reject your manuscripts, and they will reject your grants, and they will publicly say what a horrible thing is that you're doing and what bad outcomes it's going to be and how it's not going to work. But the reality is it's a lot of times protective, because someone might have spent their entire career designing something, creating something. You came in with something new that's way better. And for them, it almost makes them feel like their career was invalidated. So you have to be ready for it. And you can be gentle, and you can be supportive, and you can just promote your own work without having to talk badly about somebody else. But it will require courage, because it will happen. And your innovation may invalidate other very famous people's work. And that is painful for them. So it takes courage to be able to do that.
Advanced prosthetic hands on the market can do lots of things.
The problem is we've had no way to control them. It's kind of like having a Ferrari in your garage and no driver's license. We're providing people a driver's license to control those really advanced prosthetic devices.
And this opens up a whole new world for people who are upper limb prosthesis users.
That brings you back to a sense of normalcy. It's like you have a hand again.
So a lot of courage. I will tell you, we came up with this term regenerative peripheral nerve interface. In our first few papers, the reviewers are like, you have to change the name of that. And I'm like, no, we're not changing the name of that. Why do we have to change the name of that? And they're like, well, because this other group has this thing that they call it that, which was really not even a prominent player in this space at all. So the next thing you have to do is you have to get feedback. And I have to tell you, when you get feedback, you have to listen to it. And you have to accept it and absorb it. And all feedback is good feedback. Even negative feedback. Negative feedback, like that's a stupid idea to control the kidney, to control blood glucose levels. That, I hear that, that's fuel for me. I live off that. I love that. That's beautiful. And negative feedback is like a glass of water. So I want you to think about a glass of water, and if you have a full glass of water, it's negative feedback. You pick up that glass of water, and it's pretty light, it's not bad. But you hold that for a minute, 5 minutes, an hour. Maybe it's still pretty light. But pretty soon, your arm starts aching as you hold that glass of water. And that negative feedback starts weighing on you, and it starts hurting you. But then if you take a drink of some of that water, that negative feedback, that water can feed you. It can hydrate you. It can help you. It lessens the pain, it lessens the weight, and it feeds you. And ultimately, if you take all of the value out of that negative feedback, that glass is now empty. Your thirst has been quenched, and the glass is a lot lighter, and you can just set that glass down now and you're done with it. You have to accept that negative feedback, and you have to make sure that you use it in the way you can to grow and to improve. Next, iterate. You don't have to be perfect, you just have to be better than you were yesterday. And you don't have to know what the final answer is. You just have to take that first step. And so you have to, if you're going to dream big and build fast, you have to iterate, iterate, iterate. So that takes me to the flip phone. How many people in here had a flip phone? Yeah, amazing, right? You got that thing first. It was awesome, so great. And then someone says, you want to type on it? And you go, yeah. You can push to the number 2 3 times and get the letter C. How is that not amazing? So, but then you got to iterate. So someone says, well, how about we make an incremental improvement? Let's take the tiniest little typewriter keyboard and put it on a phone. And so we all had one of these. That thing was amazing. My thumb was bigger than 4 keys, but somehow when I pushed the button, I pushed the right one. I don't even know how that worked. But that was small iterations and improvements. But then true innovation comes through iterating and building fast, but it also requires paradigm shifts. And that paradigm shift took us to this. Can you imagine when you had a flip phone if someone said, I'm going to create a device. This device is going to get you access to the entire internet. It's going to be made out of glass, so if you drop it, it's going to break. It's going to have no buttons, but you're going to type on it. And it's going to cost you $1,000. Nobody would buy that thing. But now everyone's got that thing. And that's an iteration, but a paradigm shift, thinking about things in different ways and just recreating the entire way we communicate and we live. And we continued to iterate with the way we controlled prosthetic devices as well, and continued to refine ways that we were doing everything to even allow us to control different parts of the same prosthetic hand at the same time. And now we actually are getting a little bit better than that hook. And we are giving people a prosthetic limb that's just a little better than what everyone had been using for decades. And that iteration is what we need if we're really going to advance and get people to where they need to go. So what are we doing for Mike? So here's Mike, and he's posing there with Captain Hook. He's got his hook. Captain Hook's got his hook. They're brethren together. Here he is on his farm. He's got a woodpecker, and it's pecking his wooden arm. So, I know, what an amazing guy. We are not there for Mike yet, but we are working hard to get there. We are innovating in so many different ways to try to get there, and we are working so hard to make a difference for Mike. Success is never an accident, it's a choice. It's a choice, and that choice sometimes requires immense amounts of hard work, dedication, and commitment. But you don't have to have it all figured out to move forward. You just have to take the next step. And the question is, are you ready to take that next step? We in plastic surgery have incredible opportunities to innovate, discover, inquiry, challenge. We have the opportunity to impact so many lives in so many different ways through the work we do. All of you in this room have amazing ideas to advance the field. We need to embrace that and make a difference. And I feel so privileged to be able to serve in the capacities I have, to be able to pursue my dreams of trying to make the world a better place for people with limb loss, to try to train the next generation of surgeons, and to provide great care to patients we care for. So it is an incredible honor to be able to serve as president of the American Association of Plastic Surgeons. This society has brought me up. This society has helped me, and I absolutely love this group. I would be remiss not to thank my family for the so many hours and days and nights and everything that I was at work, and I was at home working when I should have been doing family things, and traveling and doing all the things that all of us do. We could not do it without those people around us, including my wife, Jean. And I feel so fortunate to the association for giving me this honor to be able to serve as your president. Thank you so much, and enjoy the rest of the meeting.